Their names were Cody, Noah, Nicole, and Declan. One was 20 years old, barely old enough to rent a car. Another was a mother deployed thousands of miles from her family. All four were Army Reserve soldiers, not frontline combat warriors by title, but logistics heroes who kept our troops fed, supplied, and alive. And now, they are gone. Killed in Kuwait on the first Sunday of America's most explosive military operation in over 2 decades. The United States and Israel have launched Operation Epic Fury, striking Iran's nuclear sites, assassinating its supreme leader, and triggering a war that has already cost the lives of 6 American service members. Tonight, the Pentagon has put names to those faces, and those names will echo through history. Right now, as you hit play on this video, United States warplanes and Navy submarines are operating in combat airspace over Iran. American cruise missiles are hitting their targets. Iranian drones and ballistic missiles are screaming across the Persian Gulf toward U.S. military installations. And somewhere in the United States, in Bellevue, Nebraska, in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, in Winter Haven, Florida, and in West Des Moines, Iowa, 4 families are grieving. They are sitting in living rooms, staring at the walls, holding photographs, answering calls from generals and chaplains. Their sons, their daughters, their husbands, their wives, gone. Killed in the opening hours of a war that stunned the entire planet. This is not a drill. This is not a simulation. This is America at war with Iran, and this video is going to walk you through everything. Who these fallen heroes were, how this war started, what has happened in the 5 days since Operation Epic Fury began, and what experts are now saying about where this all goes next. We will not rush past the names. We will not reduce these 4 individuals to statistics on a Pentagon briefing slide. Each of them had a life, a story, and a reason they wore that uniform. Before we talk strategy, before we talk geopolitics, before we talk about Iranian retaliation and nuclear sites and stealth bombers, we are going to honor the fallen, because that is what a real news report does, and that is what these heroes deserve. Let us begin with the youngest. Sergeant Declan J. Cody was 20 years old. 20. He was from West Des Moines, Iowa, a mid-sized American city that sits just west of the Iowa state capitol, a city of neighborhoods and high school football games and Main Street diners, a city where people are now leaving flowers outside the Cody family home. Declan Cody was 20 years old, which means he grew up in a post-9/11 world. He was born after the Twin Towers fell. He grew up in the era of the Iraq War and the Afghan War and the rise of ISIS. And despite all of that, or maybe because of all of that, he chose to serve. He joined the Army Reserve as part of the 103rd Sustainment Command, a logistics and supply unit based in Iowa. The 103rd does not get the headlines that the Rangers and the Special Forces units get. They do not carry the romantic warrior mythology of frontline infantry. But without units like the 103rd, no army in history has ever won a war. They are the people who ensure that soldiers in the field have ammunition, water, food, fuel, spare parts, medical supplies, and the 10,000 other items that keep a fighting force alive. Declan Cody was part of that invisible backbone of American military power, and he was 20 years old when he was killed by an Iranian drone in Kuwait. Sergeant First Class Nicole M. Amore was 39 years old and came from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, a small city on the shores of White Bear Lake just north of St. Paul. She enlisted in the National Guard back in 2005 when she was still a teenager and transferred to the Army Reserve in 2006. She had already deployed to Kuwait and Iraq in 2019, which means she knew what the Middle East looked and felt like. She had already felt that particular weight of being deployed in a hostile region, far from home, asking herself every day whether the air defenses overhead would hold. She was experienced. She was a leader. The rank of Sergeant First Class means she was responsible not just for herself, but for the soldiers under her command. Her husband, Joey Amor, spoke to the Associated Press in the immediate aftermath of her death. He said, and these are his words, not mine, that you don't go to Kuwait thinking something's going to happen. He said, for her to be one of the first, it hurts. There are no words sufficient to respond to that. A man has lost his wife. A child or children, the reports have not confirmed details of their family makeup, have lost their mother. And the United States has lost a decorated, experienced, loyal soldier who had already proven her commitment by deploying once before to that very same region. Sergeant First Class Noah L. Tietjens was 42 years old from Bellevue, Nebraska. Bellevue is a city in Sarpy County, Nebraska, just south of Omaha, and it sits immediately adjacent to Offutt Air Force Base, one of the most strategically significant military installations in the entire country, home to U.S. Strategic Command. Noah Tietjens was 42, which means he was a veteran soldier, a man who had spent serious years in uniform, a man who had seen enough of Army life to walk away, but chose not to. Men like Noah Tietjens are the institutional memory of the Army Reserve. They mentor younger soldiers. They pass down the institutional knowledge. They keep units functional during transitions and deployments. The loss of a 42-year-old Sergeant First Class is not just the loss of one soldier. It is the loss of everything he would have taught the 20-year-olds coming up behind him. Captain Cody A. Cork was 35 years old from Winter Haven, Florida. In the military rank structure, a captain is a commissioned officer, above a lieutenant, below a major. Cody Cork was not just a soldier. He was a leader, a planner, and a commander. His military biography reads like a map of the global challenges of the past 15 years. He enlisted in the National Guard in 2009, just as the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were grinding into their long, bloody middle phases. He was commissioned as a military police officer in the Army Reserve in 2014. He deployed to Saudi Arabia in 2018. He deployed to Guantanamo Bay in 2021. He deployed to Poland in 2024, part of the massive NATO reinforcement effort that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And then, in early 2026, he found himself deployed again, this time to Kuwait, as the United States and Israel prepared for the most significant military operation the region had seen since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. His family described him, and this is their language, as truly the life of the party, known for his infectious spirit, generous heart, and deep care for those who served alongside him. His family said he was beloved by everyone blessed to know him. Captain Cody A. Cork, 35 years old, was killed by an Iranian drone on March 1st, 2026, at the port of Shuaibah in Kuwait. These are the 4 names the Pentagon has released. There are 2 more. 2 additional service members whose families have not yet been officially notified, whose names have therefore not been made public. Somewhere in America, 2 more families are about to receive the knock on the door that every military family dreads. 2 more names will eventually be added to this list. 2 more photographs will eventually appear on television screens and news websites and social media timelines. All 6 of these deaths occurred on March 1st, 2026, just the second day of Operation Epic Fury, when an Iranian unmanned aircraft system, a drone, broke through American air defenses and struck a fortified tactical operations center at the port of Shuaibah in Kuwait. Now let us talk about the war itself, because you cannot understand the weight of these deaths without understanding the extraordinary military and geopolitical context in which they occurred. And that context is nothing short of stunning. On February 28th, 2026, a Saturday, at approximately 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, President Donald Trump appeared on Truth Social and posted an 8-minute video message. In that video, he announced that the United States Armed Forces, in coordination with the Israeli Defense Forces, had launched a massive, coordinated, preemptive military campaign against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The operation was codenamed Operation Epic Fury by the United States military and Operation Roaring Lion by Israel. This was not a targeted assassination. This was not a surgical strike on a single facility. This was a full-scale military campaign, the most significant U.S. military operation in the Middle East since the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Trump sent a war powers notification to Senate President Pro Tem Chuck Grassley of Iowa. And note the irony there, because it is Iowa that has now lost 4 of its sons and daughters. Notifying Congress of military action taken on February 28, 2026, against the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The letter stated that despite repeated efforts to achieve a diplomatic solution to Iran's malign behavior, the threat to the United States and its allies and partners became untenable. The operation's stated objectives, according to the White House official press release published on March 1, 2026, were sweeping and historic. The goals were to destroy Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure, eliminate Iran's nuclear weapons program, annihilate Iran's naval capabilities, neutralize Iranian-backed regional proxy networks, and topple the leadership structure of the Islamic Republic. These are not incremental military objectives. These are regime change objectives. The United States and Israel were not trying to send a message or force a negotiation. They were trying to fundamentally dismantle the Iranian state's military capability permanently. The opening strike, according to multiple sources including NBC News, CBS News, and the Wikipedia entry on the 2026 Iran conflict, targeted the compound of Leadership House in Tehran, the residence and operational headquarters of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Khamenei, who had led the Islamic Republic since 1989, over 36 years of supreme power, was killed in that opening strike. This is a geopolitical earthquake of the first magnitude. The death of a supreme leader, the killing of the singular figure who sat atop the entire clerical, military, and political structure of the Iranian state, sent shockwaves not just through Tehran, but through every capital on earth. The Israeli Defense Forces also confirmed that numerous other Iranian officials and military commanders were killed in the opening hours of the operation, including at least one senior advisor to Khamenei. By the end of the first 48 hours, the numbers emerging from CENTCOM and the Pentagon were staggering. The U.S. and Israel had struck over 1,000 military targets inside Iran. According to a Pentagon briefing on March 4th, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stated that Operation Epic Fury had already delivered twice the air power of shock and awe of Iraq in 2003. That is an astonishing comparison. Operation Shock and Awe, launched in March 2003, was one of the most intense aerial bombardments in modern military history, targeting the entire military and governmental infrastructure of Saddam Hussein's Iraq. To have exceeded that scale in just 4 days is a statement about the sheer magnitude of what the United States has committed to in Iran. CENTCOM released an update on March 4th, stating that long-range precision strike missiles, known as PRSMs, were used in combat for the first time in history during Operation Epic Fury. U.S. Central Command posted video of these missiles being launched toward their targets. In the same time frame, the U.S. Navy announced that it had sunk Iris Jamaran, a Muj-class Iranian light frigate, one of Iran's most modern surface warfare vessels. Additionally, on the morning of March 4th, Irin's Dina, another of Iran's newer warships, commissioned in 2021 and returning from India's Milan 2026 multinational naval exercise, was struck by a torpedo launched from a U.S. submarine and sank off the coast of Sri Lanka. Only 32 of the vessel's 180 sailors were rescued, with 101 sailors still missing. The Pentagon's stated strategic goal in targeting Iran's navy was to neutralize Iran's ability to close the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical shipping lanes on Earth, through which approximately 20% of the world's oil supply passes. On March 4th, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stood before reporters at the Pentagon, alongside Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, and made a series of dramatic declarations. Hegseth stated that Iran cannot outlast the United States. He told reporters that America is winning the conflict decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy. He announced that the Iranian Air Force has been destroyed. and delivered what will likely become one of the most quoted lines of this entire conflict, saying, "The Iranian Air Force is no more. Built for 1996, destroyed in 2026. The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf." These are not the words of a cautious diplomat hedging against uncertainty. These are the words of a Secretary of War. And note that the Pentagon itself has been officially renamed the Department of War by the Trump administration, who believes at day 4 of this campaign that the United States is winning comprehensively and intends to continue winning. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt added during a briefing that the United States of America has more than enough capability to not only successfully execute Operation Epic Fury, but to go much further, and noted that we have weapons stockpiles in places that many people in this world don't even know about. Trump himself addressed the conflict at a Medal of Honor ceremony, stating that Iran had ignored warnings against pursuing nuclear enrichment following prior U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. He claimed that Iran's fast-growing missile program was designed specifically to shield its nuclear development and make it impossible for outside powers to stop. Trump told the nation on March 3rd that the operation could last 4 to 5 weeks, though Hegseth later suggested it could go longer, saying the timeline is driven entirely by operational requirements and not a political calendar. Iran has not been passive in the face of this assault. Tehran has responded with what it has designated Operation True Promise 4, the latest in a series of retaliatory operations it has launched against Israel in recent years. Iran has fired ballistic missiles and drones at U.S. military installations in Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. Iranian drones struck the United States Embassy compound in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. 11 people were killed in Israel by Iranian missiles, according to Israeli officials. Deaths were also reported in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Iran's top national security official, Ali Larijani, made a public declaration following the killing of Khamenei, stating that Iran will not negotiate with the United States. Hezbollah in Lebanon has also entered the conflict, launching retaliatory strikes against Israel following Khamenei's assassination, leading the IDF to declare an emergency and strike southern Lebanon, Beirut, and the Bekaa Valley. The IDF confirmed killing the head of Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters in those strikes. The regional dimensions of this conflict are expanding by the hour. Kuwait, officially a U.S. ally that hosts American military forces, mistakenly shot down 3 U.S. fighter jets in what U.S. military officials described as a tragic case of misidentification in an extremely dense and chaotic airspace environment. A missile struck near Qamishli International Airport in Syria. A drone struck the Royal Air Force Station at Akrotiri, Cyprus, causing minor damage. A remarkable escalation given that Cyprus, a European Union member state, was now being directly targeted by Iranian retaliatory assets. Greece responded to the Cyprus strike by announcing it would deploy frigates and F-16 fighter jets to defend Cyprus from further attacks. Diplomatically, the landscape is fractured. Spain reportedly refused to allow the United States to use certain Spanish bases in support of Operation Epic Fury. President Trump responded by threatening trade consequences and accusing Madrid of failing its NATO defense spending obligations. By March 4, Spain had reversed course and agreed to cooperate with U.S. military operations, according to White House Press Secretary Leavitt. Turkey denied reports that it had been allowing NATO AWACS surveillance aircraft to use Konya Airport for monitoring Iran. The Gang of Eight, the 8 senior congressional leaders routinely briefed on classified intelligence matters, was briefed in advance of the operation. Congress has been divided, with congressional Democrats largely opposing the operation and preparing to vote on a war powers challenge, while Republican senators, including Tom Cotton, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Dave McCormick, and Rick Scott, all publicly praised the operation in television appearances over the weekend. Senator Lindsey Graham, speaking on Meet the Press, declared that the mothership of terrorism is sinking. The captain is dead. Senator Tom Cotton said he had not heard a single Arkansan express anything but unqualified support for the operation. Senator Ted Cruz called it the single most important decision of Trump's presidency. Meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, Democratic Representative Gregory Meeks appeared on NPR to discuss the operation and the upcoming congressional vote on the War Powers Resolution. The political battle in Washington over whether Congress has the authority to stop or limit a military operation already underway is one of the defining constitutional questions of this moment. On the intelligence and cyber front, the picture is complex. John Holtquist, the chief analyst at Google's Threat Intelligence Group, said in an emailed statement to NBC News that Iranian cyber espionage had resumed after a brief lull during the initial military strikes, and noted that much of the current Iranian cyber activity mirrors patterns seen during the June 2024 war between Israel and Iran. Gil Messing, chief of staff of the Israeli cybersecurity company Check Point, told NBC News that cyber espionage had begun well before the war started. As of the time of this script's writing, no confirmed major cyber attacks from Iran against U.S. infrastructure had materialized. But experts warn that the risk remains extremely elevated, and Iranian hacker groups aligned with the regime have been making explicit threats on social media. According to the Wikipedia entry tracking the 2026 Iran conflict, by the evening of March 2nd, an estimated 1,300 members of Iranian military forces had been killed in the combined U.S.-Israeli strikes. Iran's Red Crescent reported that more than 550 civilians had been killed in the strikes, though that figure has not been independently verified. At least 201 civilians were reported killed and 747 injured in Iran on the very first day of strikes alone, according to Iranian Red Crescent figures. A school was reportedly struck near Tehran, an incident that generated international condemnation, though the U.S. noted the school was reportedly less than 60 meters from a major IRGC naval base equipped with powerful anti-ship and anti-air missiles. Iran's foreign ministry has characterized the strikes as war crimes. 2 students were reported killed in a strike in Tehran, according to Al Jazeera. One of the most significant and underreported stories to emerge in the first 5 days of this conflict involves Iran's political and military coherence, or the rapid breakdown of it. According to Iran's foreign ministry, the military had begun to, quote, lose control over several units that are operating according to old general instructions. Without Khamenei at the apex of the command structure, and with dozens of senior generals and mid-level officers killed, missing, or, quote, cowering in bunkers, as the White House described them, Iran's capacity for coordinated military response has been severely degraded. Hegseth's briefing on March 4th stated that Iran's senior military leadership was either, quote, dead, missing, or cowering in bunkers, too terrified to even occupy the same room. Whether that assessment is accurate or is partly shaped by the messaging imperatives of an administration seeking to project strength is a question that military analysts are actively debating. The human cost on the American side currently stands at 6 service members confirmed dead, with 10 service members still seriously wounded as of Tuesday, March 3rd, down from a peak of 18 seriously wounded as some progressed through treatment. The Pentagon confirmed that 2 additional sets of remains were recovered from a facility struck during Iran's initial retaliatory attacks, and those 2 service members' identities remain officially unreleased, pending next-of-kin notification. The 103rd Sustainment Command, the Iowa-based Army Reserve unit that lost all 4 of the publicly identified service members, issued a statement through Major General Todd Erskine, commanding general of the 79th Theater Sustainment Command. Erskine said, "To the families and teammates of these Cactus Nation soldiers, you have my deepest sympathy and my respect. Our nation is kept safe by folks like these brave men and women who put it all on the line every single day. They represent the heart of America. We will remember their names, their service, and their sacrifice." Lieutenant General Robert Harder, Chief of the U.S. Army Reserve and Commanding General of the U.S. Army Reserve Command, said in a news release, "We honor our fallen heroes who served fearlessly and selflessly in defense of our nation. Their sacrifice and the sacrifices of their families will never be forgotten." Let us pull back for a moment and place this conflict in its full historical context. The Islamic Republic of Iran was established in 1979, following the revolution that overthrew the U.S.-backed Shah. For 47 years, the full span of the Islamic Republic's existence, the United States and Iran have been locked in a cold conflict that periodically erupted into hot violence. Iran sponsored Hezbollah, which killed hundreds of Americans in the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing. Iran sponsored the Houthi movement in Yemen, which fired at U.S. Navy vessels and commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Iran backed Iraqi militia groups that killed American soldiers during the Iraq War. Iran developed ballistic missiles that can reach U.S. allies across the region. Iran pursued a nuclear enrichment program that, according to U.S. and Israeli intelligence assessments, has moved progressively closer to weapons-grade capability. The Obama administration's 2015 JCPOA nuclear deal attempted a diplomatic solution, and Trump withdrew from it in his first term. Diplomatic engagement was attempted again as recently as February 25, 2026, when Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that a historic agreement was, quote, within reach, ahead of renewed talks in Geneva. 3 days later, Operation Epic Fury began. Trump, speaking at a Medal of Honor ceremony, argued that if the United States had not struck first, there would have been a nuclear war. This is a statement of enormous consequence. It is the core justification for the operation, that a nuclear-armed Iran was not a risk the United States or Israel was willing to accept, and that diplomatic time had run out. The Wall Street Journal's editorial board wrote that the operation is a necessary act of deterrence against a regime that is the world's foremost promoter of terrorism, while acknowledging it carries real risks. The New York Post editorial board described Trump as taking decisive action instead of hoping to get away with kicking the can further down the road. Not every voice in the American political and media landscape agrees. Far from it. But those are the assessments being made in the opening days of this conflict.